My wife cheated on me for it on her birthday. I got back at her by ruining her reputation. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. My mind was racing, but my body felt paralyzed. I wanted to get out of the car, march over there, and demand an explanation. I wanted to grab that guy by the collar and throw him against the wall. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching my whole world fall apart in front of me. The flowers in the passenger seat caught my eye, those damn white lilies. Suddenly, they felt like the most ridiculous thing in the world. What was I thinking? Bringing her flowers, trying to be sweet and thoughtful while she was out here doing this. I felt like a fool. I kept telling myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But deep down I knew that kiss wasn't a mistake. It wasn't something innocent. And that smile, the one I hadn't seen in so long, it was meant for him, not me. After what felt like forever, I watched them pull away from each other, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. I wanted to storm over there, but I couldn't move. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, and my mind just blank. I couldn't face it. I couldn't face her. Instead, I drove away. I don't even remember how I made it home. I just know that by the time I pulled into our driveway, the anger was gone, replaced by this heavy, suffocating weight in my chest. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the house we built together, thinking about how everything had been a lie. That night, Angela came home like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek, asked how my day was, and I stood there numb, trying to keep my face from showing how shattered I felt inside. I wanted to scream at her, ask her who the hell that guy was, why she was doing this to me. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to know the truth first. All of it. After that night, things were different. I couldn't look at Angela the same way. Couldn't hold her without wondering if she was thinking of him. Every smile, every laugh, every touch, it all felt fake. I couldn't confront her, not without proof. I needed to know everything before I could do anything. So I did what I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator. It felt surreal, sitting in that dingy little office, explaining my situation to some guy in a wrinkled suit who had probably heard 1,000 stories just like mine. He didn't act surprised, didn't ask many questions. He just nodded, took down some notes, and told me he'd get to work. That was it. No turning back now. The next 2 weeks were a blur. Every time Angela left the house, I wondered where she was going, who she was with. I pretended everything was normal. I smiled, cooked dinner, slept next to her like nothing had changed, but inside, I was a mess. My mind kept replaying that moment outside her office, the way she smiled at him, the way they kissed. I couldn't escape it. The investigator didn't take long. About 2 weeks later, he called me and said he had everything I needed. I remember sitting in my car outside his office, my hands trembling as I held the envelope. It felt like a weight in my lap, heavier than anything I'd ever carried. I almost didn't want to open it. Part of me still hoped there was some other explanation, something that would make it all make sense. But when I opened it, there it was, the truth in black and white. Photos of Angela with him, the same guy I'd seen outside her office. There were pictures of them having dinner, walking hand in hand, laughing together, and, of course, kissing, over and over in different places on different days. It wasn't a one-time thing. It was an affair, a full-blown, no doubt about it affair. I felt sick. My stomach churned as I flipped through the photos, each one a dagger to the heart. Everything I thought we had was gone. The life we built together, the memories, the love. It was all just a lie. She had chosen him over me. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at those pictures, trying to wrap my head around it. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, after all the years we'd spent together, how could she throw it all away for someone else? But I wasn't going to be the only one hurting. No! I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without consequences. I started planning my revenge. Once I had the proof, the anger came flooding in. It wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was pure, boiling rage. I couldn't believe she'd done this to me, to us. All those years, all the effort, and for what? Some guy she probably met at work? I wasn't going to just let her get away with it. No! I was going to make sure she felt the same pain she put me through. Her birthday was coming up in a few weeks. Seemed like the perfect opportunity. I knew I had to keep playing my part until then, acting like the doting husband while inside I was already planning her downfall. I wanted to pick the right moment to shatter her world, just like she'd shattered mine. For the next weeks, I was calm. I smiled, cooked dinner, laughed at her jokes, even kissed her like everything was normal. She had no idea that I knew. I was biding my time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And her birthday, that was going to be the stage for my grand reveal. I went all out with the preparations. I planned a huge party, invited her friends, her family, even some of her co-workers. I wanted everyone there. I wanted them to see the truth. She thought I was doing it out of love, but deep down, I was just setting the trap. Every day leading up to it, she was more excited, thinking I was being sweet. Little did she know, I was about to burn her whole life down. When the day finally came, I put on my best act. I welcomed everyone with a smile, played the role of the loving husband, and made sure Angela was having the time of her life. I waited for the right moment, holding in all my rage. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at her, I saw those photos in my head, and it took everything I had not to snap right then and there. But I waited. I waited until the party was in full swing, until she was standing there, surrounded by her friends and family, looking happy, like she had everything under control. Then I grabbed a glass, tapped it with a fork, and stood up to give a toast. Thank you all for being here tonight, I started, looking around the room. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to Angela. She smiled at me, completely clueless about what was coming. I looked her right in the eyes, and for a second, I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered the photos, and that feeling vanished. I want to talk about love, I continued, my voice steady. About trust. About loyalty. At that point, the room started to get quiet. People were looking at me, and Angela's smile was starting to fade. You see, these are the things that hold a marriage together. But what happens when one of those things breaks? The tension in the room was thick. Angela shifted uncomfortably, but I wasn't done. Let me show you all just how loyal my wife has been. And with that, I clicked the button on the remote in my hand, and the projector flickered to life. As soon as the first photo appeared on the screen, the room went dead silent. There was Angela with him, that same guy. They were laughing together in the first picture, arms wrapped around each other like they didn't have a care in the world. I heard a few gasps from the crowd, but I wasn't looking at them. My eyes were locked on Angela. Her face turned white. She froze, her hand covering her mouth as the images kept rolling. Picture after picture of her with him, walking down the street hand in hand, kissing in some cozy little cafe, sitting way too close on a park bench. Every shot felt like a hammer blow, but this time it wasn't just me feeling it. It was her turn to hurt. I couldn't take my eyes off her. I watched her go from shocked to horrified, her breathing picking up as the reality of what was happening hit her. Her friends were staring, whispering to each other, some of them clearly disgusted. Her parents, they looked like they didn't even recognize their own daughter. Angela, I said, my voice cold and steady, you've been hiding something from all of us, haven't you? She tried to speak, but nothing came out. She was trembling, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape. But there wasn't one. Not anymore. These photos, I continued, gesturing to the screen, are proof. Proof that the woman I thought I knew, the woman I trusted, has been lying to me. To all of us. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. But I didn't care. Not anymore. This was what she deserved. For months, she's been sneaking around with this guy. I said, pointing to the screen where yet another picture of them kissing appeared. Behind my back. behind all of your backs. The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Angela finally tried to speak, her voice shaky, barely audible. Michael, please, No! I cut her off, my voice sharp. You don't get to explain. You don't get to cry your way out of this. I pointed to the screen again, where the images had finally stopped, the last one frozen in place. Angela kissing him like she'd never kissed me. This is the truth you've been hiding from me, from everyone, and now it's out. Angela's face was a mix of shock, horror, and desperation. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face. The whole room was staring at her, judging her, watching her fall apart. I wasn't done. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I announced, my voice cutting through the silence. I'm filing for divorce. This marriage is over. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Michael, please don't do this. Not like this. But it was too late. There was no going back. The damage was done. The perfect little life she'd been pretending to have. Gone, shattered in front of everyone she knew. And I made sure she felt every single second of it. Revenge had never tasted so sweet. Angela broke down completely. She dropped into her chair, her face in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The room was still dead silent, but now the whispers had started. People were murmuring, trying to make sense of what they'd just seen. Her friends exchanged looks, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Her parents looked like they were in shock. Her mother staring blankly at the screen, her father rubbing his temples like he was trying to ward off a headache. I stood there, taking it all in, feeling this strange sense of calm wash over me. This was what I'd been waiting for, the moment where everything unraveled for her. She thought she could keep this secret life hidden, that no one would find out. But now she had to face the consequences. Angela looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, her makeup a mess. Michael, please, we can talk about this. Don't do this. Not like this. I'm sorry. I just stared at her, cold and distant. Sorry? You're sorry now that you've been caught. Where was your sorry when you were sneaking around with him? Where was your sorry when you were lying to me, lying to everyone? She tried to get up, stumbling as she reached out for me. I'll do anything. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Let's talk, just the two of us. I stepped back, shaking my head. There's nothing to talk about, Angela. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. The room still hadn't recovered. Her friends were frozen, unsure of what to do, whether to comfort her or keep their distance. Her father looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. Nobody knew how to handle this. And honestly, that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted her to feel as exposed and humiliated as I did when I first found out. Angela's lover wasn't there, of course. I made sure of that. He had no idea what was happening. He'd find out soon enough when she ran to him. That was fine by me. Let him deal with her mess. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her there in front of everyone, broken and humiliated. I didn't care what anyone thought. I'd done what I came to do. The truth was out, and my revenge was just getting started. This was only the beginning. After that night, everything in Angela's life started to crumble. I watched it all fall apart bit by bit. Word of the affair spread like wildfire, as I knew it would. Her friends, her family, her co-workers. Everyone knew what she'd done, and no one was there to defend her. She tried reaching out to people, but they started pulling away, one by one. It's funny how fast people turn on you when they realize you're not the person they thought you were. At first, Angela tried to fight it. She called me, texted me, showed up at the house, begging for a chance to explain. She'd stand outside, tears streaming down her face, pleading for me to just talk to her. I never opened the door. I didn't need to hear any more lies. Every time I saw her out there, it just reminded me of how much she had betrayed me, how she'd made a fool out of me. One day, she showed up with her parents. They stood there, looking awkward and embarrassed as she cried, begging me to reconsider. Her mom tried to talk to me, saying things like, "We all make mistakes, and Angela's really sorry." But I just stared at them through the window. I wasn't interested in hearing any apologies. This wasn't some little mistake. This was a betrayal that ripped my life apart. Eventually, they gave up and left. Angela stopped coming around after that, but by then, her life was already spiraling out of control. She lost her job. Apparently, the scandal reached her boss, and the company wasn't too thrilled to have an employee with that kind of reputation. They let her go, quietly, but everyone knew why. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the shame she brought on herself, on me, on everyone around her. Her friends, they stopped answering her calls. Even her closest ones, people she'd known for years, cut her off. I guess it's hard to stay friends with someone when their dirty laundry is aired out for everyone to see. Her family was the only group that stuck by her, but even they were embarrassed. I could see it on their faces when they showed up that day. They weren't standing by her because they believed she was innocent. They were standing by her because, well, family. That's the kind of loyalty I thought I had with her, but clearly I was wrong. I'd gotten what I wanted. Angela's life was falling apart, piece by piece, just like mine had. And it felt good. I thought that seeing her suffer would give me closure, would make me feel whole again. But instead, it just left me with this hollow feeling, like I had torn everything down but didn't know what to do with the ashes. Angela's life kept spiraling, and I watched from a distance, not feeling the satisfaction I thought I would. Sure, her friends had abandoned her. She lost her job, and she was alone, but it didn't feel like enough. I wanted her to feel the way I had, crushed and helpless. The final blow came when her family, the only people still holding her together, started to crack. Her parents were embarrassed to show their faces around town. People whispered about them wherever they went. How their daughter had been exposed in front of everyone. How she had ruined her marriage. It wasn't long before they began distancing themselves too. Not openly, but I could see it happening. They stopped defending her, started avoiding her calls. Even her own mother, who once begged me to forgive Angela, seemed ashamed to be connected to her. She had no one left. Angela tried to move on, or at least survive. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she'd moved into a tiny apartment on the other side of town, far from the life she used to know. She was working some dead-end job at a place that barely paid enough to cover her rent. The lover she cheated with, he had bailed on her. Turns out, he wasn't interested in playing house with her once everything came crashing down. So there she was alone, broke, and with no one to turn to. It was strange. I had spent weeks planning that moment of revenge, dreaming of the day when she'd be in the position I'd been in, heartbroken, humiliated, and lost. But now that I had it, now that she was truly suffering, all I felt was emptiness. The anger that had driven me was gone, replaced by this cold, hollow feeling. But I didn't regret it. She deserved every bit of what happened. She deserved to feel the weight of her own decisions. I told myself that over and over again. This was justice. This was what happens when you betray the person who trusted you the most. Still, when I heard about her breakdown, how she had shown up at her parents' doorstep one night, crying and begging them to take her in, only for them to turn her away, I didn't feel the triumph I thought I would. I just felt tired. A few weeks after Angela's breakdown, the divorce was finalized. It wasn't messy. She didn't fight for anything. She just signed the papers and walked away, defeated. The house, our savings, everything stayed with me. She had nothing left to fight for anyway. I'd already taken her pride, her reputation, and any semblance of a future she thought she had. After the dust settled, she tried reaching out again, this time through emails. Long, rambling messages about how sorry she was, how she never meant to hurt me, and how she wished we could go back to how things used to be. She begged for another chance, saying she was lost without me, that she had made a mistake. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. What was left to say? She was right. Things had changed, and there was no going back. The woman I'd loved, the life we'd built, It was all gone. Her words couldn't undo the damage she caused, and honestly, I didn't want them to. I wanted her to feel that regret every single day. The last I heard, she'd moved back in with some distant cousin, trying to piece together the scraps of her life. She was barely holding on to her job, her car had been repossessed, and her mental state was a wreck. People who once admired her avoided her like she was a disease. It was as if Angela no longer existed. She was just this ghost, floating around the outskirts of the life she once had, haunting the edges of a world that didn't want her anymore. And me? I should have felt victorious. I should have been celebrating, right? But instead, I felt nothing. Revenge had consumed me for so long that when I finally got it, I was left with this emptiness I couldn't shake. I had torn her world apart, made sure she had nothing left. And now there was nothing left for me either. The anger, the pain, it had driven me for so long. And now that it was gone, I didn't know what to do with myself. Angela's life was ruined. She was exactly where I wanted her to be. But as much as I hated to admit it in destroying her, I had lost a part of myself too. And that's the truth they don't tell you about revenge. It doesn't heal anything. It just leaves you standing in the ruins, wondering if it was all worth it. After the divorce, I tried to move on with my life, but the truth is, I was stuck. I had spent so much time focused on destroying Angela that I hadn't thought about what came after. Now that I had my revenge, there was this huge emptiness inside me. I'd won, technically. She was broken, her life in ruins, and she had no one left. But somehow, it didn't feel like the victory I thought it would. I started going through the motions, getting up, going to work, coming home to an empty house. The house that used to feel like a home now felt like a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. I would sit in the living room, staring at the walls, thinking about all the years I'd spent with Angela, how much love and trust I'd poured into her, only for it to end like this. The silence was suffocating. People around me tried to act like everything was normal. Friends would ask how I was holding up, but they didn't really want to know. They just wanted me to say I was fine so they could move on. I'd give them the same answer every time. I'm fine. It's better this way. But inside, I wasn't fine. I was lost, angry, and hollow all at once. There were nights when I'd lie in bed, wide awake, wondering if I'd made a mistake. Not about leaving Angela. That part was clear, but about the way I had handled it. Exposing her like that, tearing her down in front of everyone is sure, it felt good in the moment, but was it worth it? Did it really fix anything? Or had I just burned everything to the ground without thinking about what it would leave behind? I thought about reaching out to people, maybe finding a therapist, maybe talking to someone about everything that had happened. But every time I picked up the phone, I put it back down. It felt too raw, too much to explain. And the truth was, part of me didn't want to admit that I was struggling, that I wasn't okay, even after getting everything I thought I wanted. Angela had destroyed me with her betrayal. And in trying to destroy her, I had destroyed myself in the process. And now, here I was, living in the ashes of a life that didn't make sense anymore. I don't know if I'll ever get over what she did. The scars are still there, just under the surface, reminding me of the person I used to be, the person I'll never be again.